I don't know how to describe it, but this single video describes more what it's like to play fighting games than anything else I've seen.
I'll give him a slow curve outside. Then go back to the well, and then just keep throwing the same thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You just keep hitting them with the slow curve.
This clip did the rounds on fighting game Twitter, with many fighting game players saying things like, "The pitcher and batter relationship in real life baseball is also similar in a lot of ways to fighting games. I always tell people how similar fighting game pressure situations are to a pitching duel. This supports my long-held belief that fighting games have a lot more in common with the pitching-batting aspect of baseball than non-fans realize. Fighting game fans and sports fans will be surprised to learn that the mind games that go into both are near identical to one another. People enjoying this clip don't realize that this actually happens every day in real baseball." Does it? In real baseball, a pitcher stepping onto the mound ready to mind game every batter with a brain destroyer in their back pocket. Is there something to baseball, something between the pitcher and the batter, that fighting game players could resonate with? I mean, I do love this clip of Northern Lion playing toy baseball though. If I watch it with a fighting game perspective, I find myself nodding in agreement at each step of his strategy. I can remember a few fighting game matches of my own that went as smoothly as this, where everything played out exactly as I'd imagined, complete with my very own brain destroyer. And of course I remember these moments best. However, if I think about my more typical experience playing fighting games, it just isn't as pretty. It is much easier for me to forget the several moments where things did go wrong, the moments where nothing I tried seemed to work, or the moments where my strategy actually went well, until it suddenly didn't. That popular Northern Lion clip is satisfyingly clean, but a typical baseball match is as messy as most of my fighting game matches. The RPS is all there, we can see the mind games unfold, but sometimes stuff just goes wrong. It's a volatile sport. The worst team in baseball can beat the best team in baseball, and we wouldn't consider it a surprise. Anyone can win, anyone can lose. That's just baseball. And yet, even in this volatile environment, there is consistency. Baseball is full of people that have dedicated their entire lives to the sport. Throughout the season, each team plays almost every day for a minimum of 162 games, but one bad week can be all it takes for a player to get benched long term. Baseball is RPS, baseball is volatile, but when these people play baseball, they aren't just guessing. They can't afford to. Literally, this is how they pay the bills. And much like Major League Baseball players, the strongest fighting game players are also not just guessing. Those top players have to deal with the same RPS as the rest of us, but they know how to consistently come out on top. So, what is it? What makes a good baseball player? All of these big strong men can hit home runs, but why do some batters excel while others struggle? What strengths do the best players have that keep them at the top? And similarly, what makes a strong fighting game player? In the modern fighting game landscape, most of us are capable of good enough combos and good enough setups. We all know what the options are, so what makes one player stronger than another? I think that the greatest similarity between baseball and fighting games is rooted in the answer to these questions. So, let's answer them. But first, I do need to explain baseball. Maybe you already know how it works because you're American, or Japanese, or you play Junpei, but a lot of us have never been treated to this delightful sport, especially not here in Britain. We only just had our second ever Major League Baseball game in London, and for about half of it, the women behind me were constantly saying, "Does anyone know how this works?" So, here's baseball.
The streets are saying this is American food.
The main show in baseball is the fight between the pitcher and the batter, and that fight is decided by the count. The count is basically the life gauge of these matchups, and it's counted in balls versus strikes. If the count reaches strike 3, the batter is out. The pitcher wins. But if the count reaches ball 4, the batter gets to walk to first base for free, essentially a win for that batter, who will now try to run around the diamond to score a run. So again, if the count reaches strike 3, the pitcher wins, but if the count reaches ball 4, the batter wins. So what actually drives the count? It starts with the pitcher. They want to throw a pitch that crosses through this box, the strike zone, for their teammate to catch. That's the strike, and now they're one step closer to getting the batter out on strike 3. However, if the pitch does not cross the strike zone, that pitch is considered a ball, and the batter is one step closer to getting a walk on ball 4. But if the batter swings and misses, it will always be considered a strike, even if the pitch didn't cross the strike zone. For the pitch to actually be a ball, that batter must not swing, or they must react fast enough and pull back before it's considered a real swing. That's called a check swing. Obviously, every pitcher would love to throw strikes and only strikes to just get the batter out, but attacking the strike zone will always carry some risk. It's the location where batters are actually able to fight back, getting good hits off of pitches that are in the strike zone. That's why pitchers will often intentionally aim outside of the box. If the batter swings, they're very likely to miss, or if they do make contact, it'll likely be a bad hit that gets them out anyway. This is why a batter may choose not to swing. They know that pitchers are sometimes trying to fool them, give them the old shimmy, so they take the pitch. If they were right to expect a ball, the count sways in their favor, but if they're wrong, they just took another strike. Oops. And that's kind of it. Welcome to the game of baseball. The pitcher attacks with strikes, the batter tries to swing at them, the pitcher starts baiting them, the batter tries not to fall for it. Pitchers have the nastiest mix. On one pitch, they'll nail you with the unreactable 100-mile-per-hour fastball, and on the next pitch, they'll gut your timing with some 80-mile-per-hour pitch. If you're new to baseball, it can take a little while to fully understand, but hopefully you're getting some of the main ideas and strategies of the game. Major League Baseball still adds new rules each year, but that core game of baseball will never change. Fighting games do change though. It's a whole genre of different games that have different rules which foster different strategies. So instead of trying to compare baseball to the entire genre of fighting games, I'll be focusing on one particular fighting game that, to me, feels the most like baseball.
Street Fighter 6.
Street Fighter 6 is a game loved by many, including me, but there are parts of the game that some players don't like. One common criticism is that the game is heavy-handed with its guessing situations. After most knockdowns, the defender basically needs to guess between blocking a normal or teching a throw. But they needn't feel so bad, because they're not alone. In Street Fighter 6, the attacker is actually guessing for their life too. In most fighting games, after you knock someone down, there isn't that much to worry about. Your opponent might wake up with a reversal, and yeah, it might hit you, but you usually aren't taking much damage and both players will just reset back to neutral. In Street Fighter 6 though, nobody truly feels safe doing anything. Any button, including the most typical meaty attack, is susceptible to being perfect parried, and the punishment from that can cost you, well, $1 million. Parry isn't a risk-free defensive option though. They will lose hard if the attacker decides to throw, but if the defender expects a throw, many characters can punish throws as well. There's no safe method of attack here. That's the nature of Street Fighter 6 and the source of many players' frustrations. It's volatile, but it's still fun. The competition is exciting, Jamie is cool, Aki is cool, allegedly. So, despite the frequent guessing that many players understandably dislike, we all turn it on again, queue on ranked, and try to guess better than our opponents. Are we really just guessing, though? I mean, guessing sounds like an accurate enough description of these situations, but in my actual experience of playing the game, that description doesn't feel quite right. Although I'm often forced to make a decision, I usually don't feel the same sort of helplessness that I'm used to from a true, purely guessing situation. You know, if Aegis or Milia or Velius or just about any set play character puts me in their blender, I do feel powerless. I do feel like there is no further insight to be had past better luck next time, which is why those characters bore me. But Street Fighter 6 doesn't evoke that same feeling in me. Whenever I do guess wrong, I often feel like there's a further insight into why I was wrong and what I could do better next time. There's a chain of logic I can follow. I actually can guess better next time. I don't believe that Street Fighter 6 is a game dominated by guessing. Anyone can write a tweet and make it seem that way, like the game is all throw loops or nothing, but I think that reality tells a slightly different story. Street Fighter 6 isn't rock, paper, scissors. Street Fighter 6 is baseball.
Tony drills the ball right center field.
So to get better at Street Fighter 6, you've got to get better at baseball. Whether it's the seemingly helpless battle against an array of pitches, or the seemingly helpless battle against Street Fighter VI's oppressive offense, you can develop an approach for these situations that will serve you well. You've just got to think like a baseball player.
Our next fan is already ready to go. Let's bring him on in. What is your name and what question do you have for Mike?
Hi, my name is Bambo, big fan from the UK. Mike Trout, my question was, if you were playing Street Fighter VI and it was Grand Finals of Capcom Cup and a Luke just knocked you down in the corner, would you block on wake up or would you DP? For the milli.
That's a good question.
For legal reasons, that was a joke. I have never spoken to Mike Trout before, and if I did, I wouldn't be asking him if he'd do a DP. Now, although this video is about the similarities between fighting games and baseball, I do want to point out one of the big differences. Baseball is old. It's been America's pastime for hundreds of years, and it's been the biggest sport in Japan for several decades. That's why Rashid is in a baseball jersey. Thank you, Gachi-kun. Baseball is something that kids are introduced to and asked to take seriously from a young age. I mention all of this to say, strategy is at the forefront of baseball. It's fully on display, fully embraced, and many dads teach their sons how to get good. Hell, even mainstream baseball anime like Diamond No Ace, back when it was actually popular, is just 200 episodes of mind games and strategy. I watched this when I didn't understand how baseball worked, and this anime makes no effort to introduce you to the rules, so I don't know how I got through this. Point is, serious baseball is embedded into these cultures. There are countless books that are all about teaching your high school kid a better approach to hitting, a way to weather the storm of a dozen different pitches and show them where to begin. What do fighting games have? Fighting games are a relatively new thing, and even though esports took off and is taken very seriously, most people still view fighting games as less strategic than, I don't know, StarCraft 2? Is that a thing people still play? Of course, there are tons of guides out there for fighting games in the form of videos or documents, but strategy isn't really talked about or embraced to the extent that it is for baseball, at least not in the Western fighting game scene. So when players reach their limit and say things like, "This game sucks," because they're getting throw looped to death, I kind of sympathize. You'll see so many players criticize throw loops, which is fine, but you'll rarely see players talk about how they approach throw loop situations, and players should talk about it more, because throw loops are clearly here to stay. I want my child to read books about how to take the throw. Taking a throw is a lot like taking a pitch, and yes, these similar sounding terms work pretty much the same way. In Street Fighter VI, you take the throw because it's better than getting shimmied and immediately losing half of your health. In baseball, you take a pitch because it's better than swinging at something bad and ending the entire at-bat then and there. Both of these ideas are simple concepts that many players are aware of, but we can take those ideas further. Taking the throw is reasonable, but that can't be the start and end to anyone's approach. When do you want to take a throw, and why? Well, what does decades of inherited baseball wisdom have to say? When should a batter take a pitch? There are dozens of articles and YouTube videos of different people sharing their hitting philosophies and when they feel it might be a good idea to take a pitch. We can start with one piece of advice from the channel Ultimate Baseball Training, where Coach Justin talks about when it might be a good idea to just take a pitch as a hitter. One time where he says it's good to take a pitch is
if the pitcher has thrown several balls in a row.
Again, a ball means a pitch outside of the strike zone.
But when a pitcher, when he's proven time and time again that he's struggling to find the strike zone, make him work, make him prove that he can get back into the strike zone. Don't give him anything.
The idea is that if the pitcher is continually shown that they won't attack directly, there's no need to swing until they prove it's something that they're actually able to do. We can translate this advice to fighting games. Remember, if a pitcher is throwing balls, it's basically equivalent to someone trying to shimmy you. In fighting game terms, Coach Justin's advice would be, if the attacker keeps trying to shimmy, there's no reason for you to suddenly try and guess for a throw tech on one of your wake-ups. Don't just give them what they want, they need to prove to you that they will actually throw you. If they haven't, just sit there and take the throw, by which I mean just block, until you actually see them throw you for once. This video has a focus on Street Fighter 6, but this particular piece of advice works in many other fighting games. Under 19 birth players probably swear by it. When you're dealing with strike throw pressure, there's no need to panic and take risks until the attacker actually proves that they're willing to throw you. I think I've run into a lot of fighting game players that struggle to open me up because I don't take risks until they give me a reason to take risks, and many mid-level players aren't quick to force me into taking risks. When dealing with strike throw pressure, it's worth considering just sitting there patiently and seeing how long it takes for the opponent to actually open you up when you aren't desperately trying to escape. Hitting approaches and defensive game plans have threads of logic that intertwine, but what about the other side of things? What about the perspective of the pitcher in baseball, or the perspective of the attacker in fighting games? To be a good fighting game player, your ability to defend is as important as your ability to attack. And although it sounds like those skills should mirror each other, I think that attacking is a whole different skill set. Baseball players have the privilege of only having to play one role. If you're a hitter, you never have to pitch, and if you're a pitcher, you never have to hit. They're separate roles. The only baseball player that can do both is Shohei Ohtani, which is why I know he'd be a great fighting game player. Following the same idea as before, can decades of pitching wisdom translate over to offense in fighting games? On MLB Network, Bill Ripken demonstrates how pitchers can attack hitters.
Today's lesson plan, attacking hitters. How do pitchers get hitters out? Well, one, they can go up and down. Let's attack up and down. Boom, 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 boom.
So, Ripken is describing a method of attack where pitchers alternate between attacking the top of the zone or the bottom of the zone to mix the batter up. Easy enough to understand, you can go up and you can go down, but how do you actually utilize these different options? Ripken shows us a great example.
Clayton Kershaw right here on Cargo. Fastball, boom, that's a good pitch. Swing and miss. He never has to go back up there because it's in Cargo's mind. And when it's in his mind, he might have to cheat to get to it, which means he might expand the zone. That's up and that's down.
I feel like Ripken's description of what happened is so incredibly baseball-pilled that I'm just going to put this in my own words. The pitcher begins by targeting the top of the zone, but for the rest of the at-bat, he only targets the bottom of the zone. Why? Well, by making the batter worry about a pitch going up, the bottom of the zone became much more effective. Some of these low pitches weren't even strikes, they were the type of pitch that a batter could react to with a check swing. Remember that a batter can pull back mid-swing on reaction if they think the pitch is going to be a ball? But it's much harder for a pitcher to see and react to pitches that are too low when he's worried about a pitch that could be up. The pitcher never needed to actually go back up again. The threat of going up was more than enough. He got mental stacked, okay? I can't directly translate this to fighting games because we just witnessed a literal demonstration of baseball rather than like a general rule, but the philosophy is still there. When trying to open someone up, the threat of an option can be far more important than actually using that option. I actually think that this idea shines best in anime fighters where defense can be largely reaction based. For example, I can react to all of Chip's mix-up options by themselves, but if my opponent tricks me into looking for a pressure reset, I'm gonna struggle to react when he actually decides to attack me with a cross-up. It's hard to apply this one to Street Fighter 6 because offense and defense aren't very reaction-based, but it still comes up, like say with Jamie's overhead. Pretty much everyone that I fight can react to this overhead rather easily, but I'm still able to make this overhead work because I try to use it when I know and have shown that my opponent should look for other options. If I realize that my opponent is looking out for sweep, that opens up the potential for me to hit them with the overhead that they'll have a harder time reacting to. I think most fighting game veterans are familiar with this kind of idea, and it certainly isn't limited to baseball or fighting games. I mean, it's my entire Connect 4 strategy. How about we check out a different, more specific example? In another video, retired baseball pitcher Al Leiter is questioned on the strange approach to pitching that he had as a player.
The risk reward of consistently pummeling fastballs in, it just, to me, explain why you take that consistent chance.
Al Leiter wasn't afraid to throw fastballs inside, over and over, and by inside, we mean throwing it inside the strike zone, throwing a strike. Like I mentioned earlier, throwing a strike is eventually how you get the batter out, so it is good to throw strikes, but throwing a strike has significant risks. The batter might actually hit it. Most pitchers try to mix strikes with balls in order to stay unpredictable and a bit safe, but Al Leiter loved to consistently throw strikes. The Street Fighter equivalent would be to throw over and over with no variation, fully aware that a wake-up level 3 from the opponent is enough to kill you. So, Al Leiter, why?
And the reason why it's effective is because it's unusual. The reason why most lefties don't do it, because it's dangerous.
There isn't any reverse psychology going on here. He's exactly right. It can be effective because it's unusual, but at the same time, it is dangerous. They debate this strategy for 11 minutes.
That's a risky pitch for me. That's all I'm saying. The risk reward of every night thinking you're going to locate in here.
I'm going to tell you why I don't agree with you, because I made a career of.
I know you did.
There is no right answer. He says that it worked for him and his style, but sometimes it didn't. The very man that he's talking to actually got a home run on him.
I see good results here, for the most part. You
Yeah.
had a spin on me. You spun on me. You hit a home run at Shea Stadium, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think I can think of a few friends that like to attack this way in fighting games, and their style does remind me a bit of Al Leiter. Despite the risks, they have this unabashed confidence to do the same thing again and again, even when the stakes are raised like in a tournament. I'd say the most popular fighting game player that reminds me of Al Leiter would probably be Daigo. Like, more than any other player, I've seen clips of him just throwing someone over and over, and yeah, technically all of us could do that, but how many of us actually would do that in a tournament setting, with a Zangief that could hit us with a level 3 at any moment? I think Brian F. put it best. People doing the cover the names and you can't tell this is Daigo bit, but throw looping Geef for 4 meter 28 times, then baiting the level 3 at the very end is absolutely a Daigoism. None of you are throw looping fully stocked Geef this many times without chickening out. Brian F., I always knew you were a real one. I know I wouldn't do it because I know myself too well by now. I'm not much of a risk taker. I'll take the necessary amount of risk that any fighting game player must take in order to have a good game plan, but you'll rarely see me overextending. So a good thing or a bad thing, it's just my way of playing. Sometimes it works out, and other times it doesn't, which is fine. The desire to be exactly right in every single interaction is a trap. A trap that I still sometimes fall into whenever I'm learning a new fighting game. It is impossible for me to be right every time, so I mainly try to be right when it matters, and baseball players know this well.
There's fundamentally no difference between these Chris Bubich changeups thrown right down the middle to Shohei Ohtani, but while one results in strike 2, the other is struck 470 feet into the bleachers in right center. Not every mistake is punishable either.
All that I can ever do is try to look at the bigger picture. I think about the interactions that I do want to win, and I position myself to take that reward. I know that it's the approach of other strong players too. In this set that I had at my local, I think that's the reason this great Akuma player was able to level 3 my dive kick on reaction. It's likely that he was vulnerable to every other approach option. I probably could have gotten away with just dashing right at him, but he seemed to sense my desperation to use dive kick and positioned himself to instantly win if I actually did use my dive kick. A swift checkmate for him. Even if he were wrong, even if I didn't dive kick, what's the worst that could happen? He'd have to block, maybe take a throw. So what? That's a very small loss compared to being right about reacting to a dive kick. So he made a plan and stuck to it. In a similar vein, when I choose to jump during my offense instead of using normals or a throw, I'm going through that same thought process. If I actually get what I'm looking for, an attempted throw tech or some kind of reversal, I'll be hugely rewarded. But if I'm wrong, so what? At worst, I'll take a bit of damage, and at best, a lot of people don't react to the jump and I get to continue my pressure. This state of risk-reward is what I'm focused on, not the very specific option my opponent might pick. I don't actually expect most of these reversals on wake up. I just usually know that I can win big and I don't have much to lose, so just jump anyway. Baiting the reversal is just a happy accident. That's currently why I ever choose to jump during my offense, but what about when I actually choose to do this offensive option? When I choose to do it is constantly changing, depending on the matchup and the actual player I'm fighting, because that is what makes fighting games timelessly fun. However, the most common time a player would choose this option is when it will lead to enough damage to end the round. Standard example. Another time I like to try this option is when it can domino into something greater. Maybe it won't end the match, but maybe it'll put them in burnout and that will end the match. Keep thinking further and further ahead. Once you're able to see how a single shimmy will literally win you the entire game if you're right, while having very little consequence if you're wrong, you'll start to understand how to make good decisions in a random environment. Street Fighter 6 is purposefully designed this way. Every choice has an impact on another, which has an impact on another, which has an impact on another. This is baseball. This is how one meager hit dominoes into the reason you won the whole game. Fighting games, like baseball, tend to have best options, but they can never be solved. There isn't ever a right answer until the moment has already passed. You still have to figure out and adjust to the way that your opponent thinks, but the point is to be more informed in your decision making. The results of that thinking will still be different for everyone, and the choice that you choose to make will still be a reflection of you and what you prioritize. Maybe that will change. I think it always changes. My own thought processes constantly change as I get better, but I trust it, because without it, I'm just guessing, and if I have to start truly guessing, I already know that I've lost. The best baseball players do not guess. Each player has their own approach and they stick to it.
He does this by not chasing pitches outside the zone. Jose Ramirez has a completely different approach. He's swinging at everything, and that means chasing everything. But his contact skills are so good, he usually just fouls off the bad pitches to hit and crushes the good ones. Either way, he prioritizes damage.
Street Fighter 6 is inherently unpredictable. Players do their best to tame the chaos in a way that favors them. Sometimes they even take small losses to get bigger wins because every single decision has the potential to spiral into something massive, good or bad. That's why Street Fighter 6 is baseball. Every baseball pitcher has their own pitching arsenal, every batter has their own strengths and weaknesses, and every fighting game character has their own unique offensive and defensive capabilities. Throwing JP in Season 1 of Street Fighter 6 was like throwing a fastball down the middle to Bryce Harper with the bases loaded instead of just walking him. Like, we're all aware that this is usually fine to do, but you're up against an opponent that's gonna punish you much harder than usual and is gonna end the game in one blow, so you wouldn't actually do this, right? Like, you wouldn't do this, right? Like, please, why? The Angels, why did you do this?
How about that for heroics into the second deck as Bryce Harper has time.
If you actually got this far into the video, thank you very much for watching. I know that a lot of fighting game players do not give a damn about baseball, but I think anyone that knows me knows this video was inevitable, regardless of how it does. I enjoyed making it, so I hope you enjoyed listening. I do want to say, I'm already a baseball fan that follows the season, but for this video I did a lot more research into like their strategies and the learning, and there's so many cool things that I found that I did have to omit from the video because look, this video is already long enough, but I do just want to say, like, it is striking just how much all these decades of baseball wisdom can actually be translated to fighting games, and there's a lot more I'd love to show, but we would be here forever. Look, I love me some baseball. I do recommend giving it a shot. What I'd recommend as a first game is Mexico versus Japan from the last year at the World Baseball Classic. I watched it live and I loved it, one of the best games I've ever seen, but the full game is available on YouTube through MLB. Just don't try and watch baseball the way you watch a fighting game. Baseball is really long, and for me, it's best enjoyed like on the side. Like, I give it a lot of tension in the first few innings, then I just let it sit on the side, and you know, you tune back in when the tensions start to rise. Alas, this is it. If you got this far, again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts, I would love to read them in the comment section. And if you do want to hear more about fighting games from me, do subscribe. Additionally, if you would like to show any thanks with a one-time donation, I have left a link to my Ko-Fi in the description. Thank you to the kind pair that have donated already. And with all that aside, thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.